Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ella Turna. I am hosting the event today. I'm here with a bunch of people, and we are going to talk about the idealization of revolution in media. Who else wants to?
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it. So, hi, my name's Cameron. You may have met me. I'm pretty obnoxious. I was in the first podcast because I'm cool. I'm a triple major BA student, so I don't see myself getting a job in the future. And yeah, that's it, really.
Okay, thanks, Cam. Hi, I'm Tash. I'm a third year BA student doing sociology and anthropology. Although I am more inclined towards sociology, I'm also part of PAM. I'm on this live event because Ella didn't know who to invite, and I'm very excited to be here. And yeah, this is the first podcast that I will be a part of in my life, so I'm hoping it's a good one.
I'm Jojo. I'm from UCT, and this is my first time being part of this PAM podcast. I'm doing economics and organizational psychology, and that's me.
Hi, I'm Jen, and I'm so glad I'm not the only one who's doing this for the first time, that I'm in the same boat as Jojo and Tash. I'm a third year humanities student. The subjects are international relations and anthropology, and I find anthropology such a advantage to policy making and conflict resolution, which is definitely something I enjoy doing, and so I'm very excited to be here today.
Okay, awesome. We should get started on the conversation. The first thing I wanted to talk about would be, what is a revolution? What constitutes a revolution in any sense of the word?
Well, I mean, we could go with official definitions, but if I think about a revolution, I think about an overturn of a system that is not benefiting everyone necessarily. But I know that's incorrect because some revolutions are for the worse. We have seen those throughout history. When I think of a revolution, I just think of a social system that's overthrown. Then there's a period of chaos because no one knows what the hell they're doing. And then a new one gets implemented. But the thing with revolutions is it's a large change involving a lot of people, and they can lean towards violence as well. So that's my 2 cents on how I see revolutions.
So the way that I see revolutions is like generally in a society, when there is a difference between exploitations of the people who are living in the society and like the actual achievements that they have, there's like an intolerable gap that develops. And when that develops, people tend to revolt against the system that might be oppressing them. So that's my 2 cents as well. Okay, anyone else? For the love of God.
I like both definitions. I feel like I have nothing to add between the two of them.
Okay. And Jen?
It's pretty much what you guys have said, I have a kid of the word revolution and what it entails.
Yeah, I mean, like, is it always a good thing for people to be revolting? Like, I feel like a lot of times it can start more trouble than what was previously around.
Yeah.
Yes. So the starting more trouble is the thing with revolutions. Often, as we've seen throughout history, they're not planned. They happen very, very quickly. And there's a lot of collateral damage. Obviously, before you have a revolution, you have a build-up. You have a shared feeling of unrest, of disjuncture, of disappointment, and it springs forth from that. But the thing with collective action is, if it's not planned properly, someone's going to get hurt. And we have seen that all throughout human history. Just look back, and then you'll just see what happened.
It's very true, because if the people overtaking the government don't have a plan, then there's no real rules that they can follow once they've taken it over. You know, there's no laws for them to follow now, so they may just become as bad as the people that they've taken over from.
You know, I think that one of the big appeals when it comes to revolutions is just like our innate tendency to, I don't know, to overvalue community, group-based action. I think as social creatures, I think it's really innate in our makeup.
Yeah, so that was actually something that I wanted to talk about, is the point of solidarity that is created through revolutions, that shared feeling of we're all working towards a very specific end. I mean, solidarity has been removed from our lives in a bunch of ways, and a lot of it can be attributed to capitalism and how we feel alienated from our work. We feel alienated from ourselves. And then through solidarity, we start to feel a purpose again. We start to feel we belong somewhere. And that kind of, in my opinion, that gives revolutions a lot of wind, is the solidarity aspect of it. You don't feel alienated because you know what you're doing, and you know you're doing it with other people.
You know, like that kind of brings me to thinking about Hunger Games and how the revolution was written in that series, right? Because I think, and also how it was depicted in the movies. So I was watching this video about Hunger Games and like how difficult it is to actually write revolutions. So generally in media, we have revolutions that are started or finished by like chosen one based characters, right? But it's kind of different in Hunger Games, where the character actually isn't available for the end of like the revolution, right? She's knocked out, like Katniss is knocked out, and you don't actually see the whole revolution happen at the end, right? But there's this whole build-up of like community presence when it comes to that, and knocking her out at the end takes away that like single person aspect of a revolution and makes it more community orientated, which you don't actually see in a lot of media representations of revolutions, which was pretty cool to me.
That point
There's some...
there.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go on,
Ella.
Jenny. No, go, Jenny.
I like that point of the individual, because I was thinking about it is, can we as human beings even stop at solidarity, at community, or do we have this innate desire to acquire power, to want to rule over something else, And that's a point that when we look at revolutions, they generally start out with good intentions, and they generally start out great, and for some reason they end up horribly, and even in this, you're talking about the Hunger Games, and I can't remember if it was in 1 or 2, or there is another lady who seems to be on the good side, an older lady, and she's heading up the revolution against,
Oh yeah, number
yes,
3, I think it was, yeah,
General
number 3.
Coin, President
yes,
Coin.
exactly, and she's heading up this revolution against, the Hunger Games and everyone having to do those things, but she somehow starts to get this feeling of power and wanting it more and more, and becomes exactly like the enemy she's fighting. And so that for me is a tricky part of power and of revolutions, because revolutions aren't something that is won without power. You have to have power to win a revolution, but I don't know if we as human beings can stop at the right point.
Yeah, there's always this idea that power corrupts, like it's very present in Hunger Games, when just as soon as these people who are fighting against the capital take over, now immediately the first thing they want to do is just start another Hunger Games. But also, like, I'm tutoring first years at the moment, and we're doing Tale of Two Cities, which is about the French Revolution, which is about the French Revolution, and it's exactly that. It's as soon as these revolutionaries or rebels come into power, as soon as they gain power, all they do with it is feed their need for vengeance. And in the end, they don't have what they set out to achieve in the beginning. They wanted freedom, and what they ended up achieving was just violence.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, that's one of the aspects of revolutions that's kind of iffy, because they are typically characterized by violence and, mob mentality, which is, linked to, again, violence. So I think it's hard for you to like overthrow something or fight for, like, even though your cause might be something that's overall good, the point where you stop at, like, because you're changing with violence, how can you then like double back and then like go into a peaceful society or something like that, because you've had such a violent start? So I think that's where a lot of the issue comes in, because I mean, I guess that's why in like democracies we have like all of our rules and stuff like that, but it's a double whammy, revolutions.
I think that one of the other issues when it comes to revolutions is how idealized certain concepts become. And when it's not actually possible for those concepts to come into action after the revolution, there's a lot of incongruency that manifests.
Yeah.
We were talking about Hunger Games, and there's such this, I don't know, I have to admit Hunger Games are one of my guilty pleasure movies, so I've watched all of them way too many times. But in the second movie, I think it's the second movie, or maybe it's the third, but everyone's decided now we're going to fight back. And there's a few scenes like where they bomb the dam or where they bomb some soldiers.
It's the third movie, I think.
Third movie. There's this romanticization of it. It's we're all in this together. It's this noble fight. There's this beautiful music in the background, and there's amazing cinematography. And you're like, and it kind of fully shows the violence without making it seem as terrifying as it actually is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, like I think that one of the things that really predisposes us to liking the idea of revolutions is that generally we're all pretty separate. Like generally in everyday life, we're pretty separate from each other. Like I think we feel pretty separate from each other. So when there's like this idea of community that revolves around revolution, because obviously you need I think like a relatively large group of people to revolt, right? Like this concept of everyone coming together despite social, I don't know, like differences, despite race, despite ethnicities, to overthrow something that's bigger than them. I think that is a very, I guess, like a very romanticized aspect of the whole situation.
Yeah, so I can think about what's that movie called? Divergent. There was also
Oh God,
revolutions.
the movie sucks.
Anyway, but what I often see in media is not necessarily the portrayal of the revolution that happens, right? So let's take Peaky Blinders. I think it's the start of the 1920s.
That was such a good series.
Yeah, I can go on for hours about that series. Anyway, and you see, like every now and then you hear about the workers' strikes, you hear about these massive social movements happening, and they just happen to put them in there. And I think that romanticizes it a lot, because very few people have a lot of money. Let's just put it in plain colloquial terms like that, right? But if you portray a working class struggle, you're touching on another tenet of what people want to see. Oh, I'm working class. Look at these people. They're getting ready for a revolution. I can identify with that. And that's a big thing for me that I've noticed in movies and series and all of that, is taking that part of the revolution, like a certain tenet, say class, right? And portraying that as the main thing to connect people to it. And then we see this romanticized version of it because we only connect to a certain part of it. And I think that's what's going on in the media. Sorry, this was quite far away from what we've been talking about, but I just wanted to put that out there.
No, you go.
It actually connects to something I've been thinking about since Cam spoke to me about this podcast, is this idea of a convenient activism, where it becomes something that's you're willing to do. I think even though we want to be part of community, something we want more is to be comfortable. And as soon as our comfort is disrupted, then we're, a bit shaken. And I'm going to reveal my nerdiness here, but there's this show I love called Timeless. It's basically politics and history and time travel in one show. Absolutely amazing. But they basis of the story, they go back in time to try and keep history the same, but they actually save people in history. And I just think of that, the media is portraying these things as easy, as it ends well. It's even, they put real history in there. They went to the Salem witch trials, and that was not an okay situation. That was basically government taking away the voice of people. And what they did there was, they prevented certain ladies from being hung. But in real life, that's not what happened. In real life, innocent women were hung, were killed. These things are horrible. These things are real. And I think we become desensitized to this issue of it's human beings. It's people who have actually gone through this. It's someone who had to stand on that plank and know they were innocent, but know everyone thinks they're a witch and die and never have their name cleared, And I just think we don't realize the violence that is part of revolutions and activism. Are we willing to go to jail for this? Are we willing to have people do things to our bodies because we're seen as part of a movement that the government doesn't want? And I don't know if many people are actually willing to do that. They just want to be part of a name and part of a group.
No, you're so right. There's this constant bombardment of violence in the media nowadays. Every second action movie has beheadings and stabbings and all of this extreme violence, and it's just become very, very normalized for us, and then the sense of a revolution is inherently violent, but for us, we don't see it like that or we don't see the true violence that can come from it because we're so desensitized to it.
Yeah, this desensitization that comes from looking at visual media, whether it be a movie, a series, a comic strip, whatever, hearing it in music, it obviously links up to revolutions, right? But what happens is we lose a sense of humanity. Because if we were to see these things right in front of our eyes, how would we react? And that's it's really messed up in a way that, oh, okay, this grabs our watcher's attention, so I'm going to show you this revolution. I'm going to show you all this violence, la-di-da. We get desensitized. But the thing is, what happens if we take that sense of romanticization too far and now we are on our own revolution, right? And we like people working together to overthrow something. How do you combat that? Because they have this image in their head that they'll be able to handle it like the main characters that they are. And that's the thing is, obviously reality gets twisted in media, but I'm always thinking, what are people trying to drive when they show us these things? Are we somehow making revolutions okay? And also, what kinds of revolution are there? Because this is what I've also been thinking about, is not necessarily all revolutions nowadays are physical ones. It might just be like a media revolution, like the Me Too movement, which allowed for sexual assault victims to come forward with their stories more and more and more. And I see it becomes normalized now to actually say, I was sexually assaulted, and to have people support you. So that was, I think, if I could put a name to it, a soft revolution, I guess.
Sure. Okay, but I think that expresses more of a positive version of how media can be used to help with revolutions, and how revolutions can be positive in a sense. I feel like if you have an outlet to express things that aren't generally expressible in the society that you're in, it can be extremely beneficial for changing that society. And when it comes to social media, right? Like there's this thing called resource motivation theory, where basically the theory is that people won't join together unless they have the resources to do so. So in a way, you can see social media as a type of resource that allows people to join together against some kind of common evil, which I think is pretty cool.
I mean, you can see it in the use of social media to promote Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, I never would have known what was happening in America with police brutality if it weren't for Instagram and TikTok and social media news platforms and stuff like that. I mean, it's a way of getting what needs to be heard out there to the masses.
I think like one of the bigger things as well is not necessarily just people being on social media, but it's also people being restricted from using social media. That can show us how bad a society is getting. So I know that like I think it is in Northern Africa, it might be, I think in Egypt, I'm not sure. If someone gets more than 5,000 Twitter followers, right, they can actually be restricted from sending certain tweets that might elicit violence. They can be arrested for it because they're seen as influencers. Okay, someone else talk more.
I mean, with regards to like censoring on social media, it's the same thing around like election periods with a lot of third world countries where the party in power won't want. So, okay, say now they're like corrupt, which is usually the case. They won't want people to be able to like gather or access different kinds of information that would hurt their regime. So then in that case, they'd also censor things. But I think, yeah, censoring of media in any case is obviously bad, but obviously you do in some cases want to be able to censor some people who just, you know, throw fake nonsense out there the whole time.
Like Donald Trump.
Fake news. Fake news.
But the thing, like with what I think about censoring Donald Trump is a very dangerous thing because it sets a very bad precedent. Because when they did censor him, he was still president. And the fact that you can have a tech company censor a sitting president, I think that's also like extremely dangerous.
I think it is dangerous, but also it can be like positive, especially like in the case of Donald Trump, where he was, you know, advocating for things that were just not kosher.
But if you look at what he actually said.
Wait. Like, is it just me? Can anyone else hear Jojo?
No.
No.
Jojo. Honey, talk.
Okay, well, while Jojo's getting her connection back, I do, in a sense, agree with her. I think it becomes dangerous when we decide who gets to speak and who doesn't. I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I do not agree with with about 99% of the things he says, besides, you know, the articles in between his sentences, you know, A and the, those are okay.
I do agree that walls can be big. I don't think that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Mexico is a country next to America. You know, great. Those are things we know.
I can agree with that.
But I think the thing is, you know, who gets to decide who gets to speak and who doesn't, and that's when it becomes dangerous because we are fighting for people to have their voice heard, yet. And I don't like certain people's voices. Let me tell you that I really don't.
Trust me, I don't either.
But I think it's dangerous if we don't let them speak. I think that's part of learning how to combat those things. And the one thing I think, I'm not going to say it was positive that came from Donald Trump, but the one thing we can learn from this experience is how many people do agree with what he's saying, which means we still have so much more work to do. Before that, we thought the world was really getting to a great place, but now we're going, hang on, something is going on that's not okay. There are still people that are thinking a certain way, and we need to address that. So I I'm really on the fence of this thing of, banning someone from saying things. I think hateful comments are horrible and those should be banned. I don't think an entire person should be banned from a social media platform. I think, like I said, if they having a comment or a picture that incites hate, that should be taken off. But I think banning an entire person could get sticky because a revolution could start saying that about women, that women are, inciting violence and things. And then we go back to, the who knows when, and we aren't allowed to vote anymore.
Well, I just want to quickly jump in there. I do agree with you, but again, on the topic of Donald Trump, he was inciting violence, wasn't he? Like the whole protest against Washington, where they stormed Washington, was based on shit that he was saying. He was so.
He literally told everyone to go home.
No, and he started this shit by saying there will be some shit on whatever day it was. What was it, early Jan? I'll find the tweets and I'll send them.
If I remember correctly, there was also a few of his tweets that were taken down about COVID due to misinformation. He was giving medical advice that he was not allowed to give, that was in danger of people.
I mean, yes, in a case like that where he's saying obvious nonsense, then delete his tweets, but you can't remove him from the platform.
But what if he's doing it consistently over a long period of time?
I think it's a tricky situation because the danger with having someone so popular saying bad things and taking their platform away is clearly they're popular because they have a lot of followers. And if you take away their platform, that could make them some sort of new wave martyr. And everyone that follows him will still believe everything he's saying, and maybe one of them will become just as bad as he was, or what was said has been said. And this idea that his platform has been taken away might just strengthen the views of everyone that followed him in the first place.
Exactly, because everyone was so mad, on the right, when they banned him. So
they were mad before that.
But they were even angry.
Because they're on the right.
I feel like I need to chip in here because this, I just think of this goes onto the thing of what is right. Everyone has their own opinion, and I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but in this discussion, the thing is Donald Trump thinks he was right, and we do not. So there is also this thing of freedom of speech. There is also this thing of freedom of beliefs, and that is something that is very difficult to navigate. We all think those are beautiful rights, and they are beautiful rights, and they are great things to have, but they also come with a lot of responsibility, and that means allowing others to speak their truth. We have this, idea that everyone has their own truth, which that is an entire new topic I would, take a whole day to speak on, because I don't know if everyone can have their own truth, but, we all have our own truth, and how are we supposed to stop someone from having their own truth? I'm not saying that he's right, but if we look back in history, a lot of Germans agreed with Hitler at the time. They thought he was right. And only after things came out and they saw the real damage did they realize that they were with the wrong guy. So we don't always know who is the right person to believe because there are so many truths out there.
Okay, but then using that logic, right? Wouldn't it have been better to be able to, dismiss some of the things that Hitler had said at the time for, to prevent followers from, siding with him? Would you want him to continue to say things that are, anti-Semitic and shit like that?
No, not at all. My thing is, though, these people didn't start agreeing with him just because he said these things. They had these ideas in their heads and their hearts before that. And so that's what I meant by this is something we need to look into. It's not just about the person leading the revolution. It's about the people following it. And that's where the power comes in. Yes, that one person, says all the speeches, but the fact that they have a following gives them so much more power. And that's what we need to go into. I think we're focusing on the wrong people. We're focusing on leaders instead of individuals.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Because even in movies, like we were talking about Hunger Games earlier, the movies focus on Katniss and President Snow, and sure, there's clips every now and then of what's happening with the normal people, with the average people, but the entire story centers around a very small group of people, therefore not representing the actual people who are fighting the revolution. People who are part of this so-called brotherhood or fraternity or gang. I don't know what you call
The
it.
gang. Searching for something to say. Tash, say
Okay,
something.
Tash is coming to save. Oh, that's nice, Kat. Thank you for stepping on that.
Eat it?
Anyway, no. What did I want to say? Oh my soul, my brain is honestly not working today. Please bear with me, guys. I hope you can edit this part out.
Of
Can I
course we can.
say Tash's voice is like red velvet cake as a
It is,
sound.
isn't it? It's
My
so
soul.
soothing. It's so beautiful in my
you.
ears.
Like,
Thank
please
you. Love
record
that
like
voice.
a book, like read a book so we can like listen to it on
Oh,
audiobooks.
I actually love reading out loud, so I will be so. What did I want to say? What did I want to say? Shit.
Okay, let's just backtrack.
Give me a second. I'll be back with like my thoughts now.
Seeing as we're talking about revolutions in media, we've only really covered Tale of Two Cities and Hunger Games. Do you guys know any? Can you guys think of any other revolutions in media that have given you some sort of extreme emotion or even just a minor emotion? What revolutions have you guys seen in movies or series or read about in a book?
Well, if you think about social media, I graduated from Pretoria Girls High in 2016, and that's when the whole hair debate came out, and that was completely on social media, you know. And it's different when you're in the thick of things, you know. When you're there, you're getting first-hand accounts, and then you'll see people post things on Instagram, and I'm like, that's so untrue. Like, people would be against the movements, and I'm like, you're not understanding what this is for. Or someone will have made up a story, you know. Both sides got really like extreme with rumors and things like that, and I just thought to myself, this idea of like escalating a revolution on Instagram by making it seem worse and worse and worse is really dangerous, because you're not then focusing on the real issue, you know.
There's a lot of misinformation in certain aspects. Like, I remember there was a lot of protests against gender-based violence when I was still in Pretoria. I think it was my first year or something.
Yeah,
and
first
then
year.
a bunch of videos started circulating about women being abducted just down the street from me. And I was freaking out, and I was so terrified that I can't go to university. Someone's going to pull up on the side of the street and kidnap me. And then it took about a week, and everyone was like, no, actually, that's a fake video. It was from about 4 months ago, and they found the culprits and stuff like that. But there's a lot of misinformation that circles when people want to achieve something.
Okay,
So
Tash.
I've gathered my thoughts now.
Okay, go
this
Tash.
kind of ties in with the misinformation. Is I think that people are hungry for change, if I can put it that way, and because we're so hungry for change, we idealize revolutions, right? And it's not slow change. Oh no, we want dynamic, fast change. And I think that links in with the spread of misinformation, is because we get so riled up because thank goodness something's going to change. And then there are so many gaps for misinformation. There's a massive gap for romanticizing something that's supposed to take time, that is going to hurt. And so yeah, I think it's just, especially now with lockdown, you know, every day feels the same, essentially. Time feels like it's moving, and yet it's not moving at all.
Oh, what a mood.
And so we get so stuck in ourselves and stuck in this boring cycle of life that people, that hunger for change, you can capitalize on it, essentially, through idealizing revolutions, through offering information as quickly as possible, even though it's wrong, and people will just eat it up.
There's also, this is something that I was thinking about earlier, is there's also the problem that people expect immediate change. You know, if something really bad happens, then everyone protests against it. But if nothing happens, if nothing changes immediately, then all of a sudden you stop hearing about it. I mean, it happened with Black Lives Matter and it happened with gender-based violence. Everyone was very riled up for a short period of time. But then when nothing changed immediately, it started to fizzle out. You didn't see it on Instagram anymore, or you didn't hear about it. Well, I still tried to keep updated, but in general, people stop talking about it as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I can kind of draw it back into the socio-economic landscape of industrial capitalism that we're in at the moment. Because let's think about consumerism and the way we've all been socialized into consumerism, right? If you want to buy something, you want to buy it now, and it has to be at your fingertips. And we've got this idea of instant gratification. And I think the same thing happens with social movements and with revolutions. If it can't happen instantly, then we don't want it, because it's a way that we've been taught to think. Subconsciously, it's not necessarily overt power in that sense. But I also think, and I think this also ties into the disjunctures that exist in revolutions. What now? The revolution happened. Now this whole system has changed, but to what is it changing? Because we wanted to do it quickly. We want to throw over this power. We want something to be better. But the organizational phases of it weren't laid. Like, the foundation isn't there. It's just, this needs to change, let's change it. And this is not true for all revolutions, not necessarily. But
Look,
I think it kind of ties in with our socialization processes.
Look, I think that like one of the biggest things is that people just don't have fucking energy, man. Like, I genuinely, like, for a sustained movement, I don't think people just have the energy to keep on fighting. Like, it depends on what obviously they're fighting for. But especially if you are not, like, I guess, directly involved in anything, I think it can be really, really difficult to keep on going and keep the motivation up for yourself. Just because, like, we're so busy all the time. Like, how do we have the energy or the capacity to like give anything to another movement? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And sorry, just anyway. What did I want to say? So we live in the global
Society.
era, in a society. We live in this era of globalization. So these movements, not everywhere, once again, because they are third world countries. I hate that concept so much. Anyway, that we're all connected. Okay. But that creates solidarity and it removes solidarity, because the moment you click off your screen, you're alone again. And I think that is a big part of why movements kind of fizzle out as well, is because they're global. We don't get together physically. And to link that back to revolutions is, we see all these revolutions and we're like, yes, sense of community, physically being there. I think that might be another tenet of why the media romanticizes revolutions, because they're like, oh my word, look, everyone's there. They're physically in the moment doing something for change.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that.
This idea of I'm thinking, like, Tash and Cam, you guys made, quite tying points of, global and it being big and, overwhelming, and us all being tired of joining another revolution. And I want to link this back to that idea of the individual and really focusing. I think that's what we need to focus on after revolution. When we've done the big fight, when we've really created the movement, afterwards, it needs to be conversations with individual peoples, and those aren't going to just be one day and it's over and you've changed a person's mindset. Very often, it's going to be a
inaccurate feeling, It could just be a form of, it is a form of her trying to protect herself, but in the case of Black Lives Matter and police brutality in America, if it happens so frequently and it happens in the same way, the same every time, then it has a reason that if a black person sees a white policeman, they're going to be afraid, because it's all of their family members have stories. They have stories. You know, it's
Exactly, yeah.
it's a justified feeling that happens.
To kind of bring it back to the concept of like, I guess,
Revolution.
No,
Oh.
screw revolution.
Fine.
We're not here to talk about that.
No, definitely not.
To bring it kind of back to the concept of individualism, I feel like we're very socialized to become more individualistic as like humans in general, right? I think more recently, like in more modern times. So when it comes to sustaining revolutions, I feel like you have to be more community oriented in order to keep that going. Like obviously you have to care about your own individual, like I don't know, your individual, what's it called, deprivation that's occurring, right? But like at the same time, you have to have like a more global sense of what's going on in order to keep something sustained. And I feel like in more modern society, we don't have that. We're very disconnected, like Jen was talking about, like where you can just turn off a screen and you're no longer really part of a community. You're just like on your own again. So I think that can be like really alienating for a lot of people, and it really takes away motivation to continue movements, especially things that aren't directly affecting you.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense.
Tash, how do you feel being part of the goth community?
How do I feel being part of the goth community? Well, first of all, it's not the goth community, it's the alternative community.
The spooky witchy vibe community.
It's the alternative community. Let's just call
Right.
it that.
Guys, all we have to do is fucking ad lib for the next 10 minutes, all right?
Yeah, same. Anyway, so the alternative community is a very interesting one to be in.
Oh, no.
because-
Tash, that was literally a joke. Can we actually
But
like...
okay,
No, alternative community can like be tied to revolution. I mean,
exactly.
Was it
we'll
first
copy
year or
and paste
second
the
year
shit
that we
out of
spoke
this.
a lot about
First
punk
year.
and
Yeah, it was first year.
and the
Punk
punk
cuisine.
revolution toward punk cuisine, the food
Yeah.
revolution.
Black Cat
Yeah,
Cafe.
Cat
the alternative
cafe.
community is interesting when it comes to moving beyond an aesthetic, because we are called the alternative community for a reason. It's because we think in an alternative way to the main ideology being pushed onto us. And I think within this community, the way that we kept ourselves connected is we would dress differently than other people. We express ourselves differently than other people as a way of keeping ourselves connected, even when our phones are off, even when we're not together. I mean, if I walk through a mall and I see someone that kind of, dresses in the same way that I do, immediately brain thinks, oh, perhaps they think the same way that I do. It creates an opportunity for connection. And I think that's the alternative community did that in a really weird way with the music that we listen to and the way we dress. It's very specific. A lot of black involved.
You could argue that like the type of music appropriated by alternative culture is revolutionary in its own right. Right?
Yeah, it makes sense because if you lean towards the music that the alternative community listens to, it sings about going against the system. Like, think Nirvana, think Pink Floyd. Like,
just another brick in the wall.
Exactly. They literally have a song saying, no, we cannot be like another brick in the wall. So that's essentially, how this idea of social change and then revolutions manifests itself in music to create new meaning.
Okay, but
the thing that I really wanted to talk about that I actually forgot about, but you just reminded me, is the use of symbols in revolutions. Like, they depicted a bit in Hunger Games where, like, they're all wearing a little bit of gold so she knows that they're on her side or something like that in the actual games. But it's such a common thing in movies about revolutions to show that you're a part of this revolution with an item of clothing or a symbol. There's a lot of symbolism that they use to present themselves as a part of the revolution. I think is interesting.
I feel semi-attacked because this is a cute little personal anecdote for you guys. So I did a assignment on feminism a while back in sociology, and my boyfriend, that's a disgusting term, I was doing it in his sister's room, and the sister is also a feminist. So we create, like, at the end of the day, I was sitting on her bed, she does stick and poke tattoos, and I got the female symbol tattooed on me, so that I know I'm part of whatever, feminist movement I'm a part of. I try to be an intersectional feminist. But yes, symbols, if you see them depicted online, right, and you start identifying with that symbol, you are going to take it away from the media and into your own life. Not always, but it's a way of also creating solidarity. And I think this is what I meant with the dressing differently, is creating solidarity that is there essentially subconsciously.
Well, do you feel like open access to these symbols through things like media can actually put them in a position where they are taken away from their context really easily by large groups of members?
Yes, it can, because we're living in a global era, and it frightens me to think that, anyone can put something out and someone might just appropriate it because it looks aesthetic. It frightens me to think that way.
Well, that's exactly what happened with the Nazi symbol. The I can't remember what it's called. What's it called? What's the Nazi symbol called? The swastika.
Yeah.
It was taken from a sign in it was Buddhism or Hinduism.
I think it's Buddhism, yeah.
Buddhism. It was taken from a Buddhism sign that meant something peaceful or loving, and they took it and they warped it into such a sense of like cruelty. And now if you see that sign, the only thing you associate it with is Nazis and Mein Kampf and stuff like that. But actually the original meaning was something so different, and actually something quite wholesome.
Jojo, are you part of any Nazi organizations at the moment?
You'd be surprised. I'm kidding. No. Yeah, but the whole conversation on symbolism is very interesting, because it is, I guess, nice if you go to different parts of the world and you see something that you can identify with, and it makes you feel like you're part of like a bigger community. But then I get the whole thing about like appropriating symbols, because sometimes you can you lose the real meaning behind it. So like, for example, I mean, it's his face, but Che Guevara, like a lot of people don't know. Like,
I see so many t-shirts
like,
of Che Guevara walking around, and I'm like,
so cool. They don't actually know like anything about it. So
like girls shopping at Zara in Santon wearing a Che Guevara shirt, and I'm like, this feels. I don't want to judge, because maybe they are purely activists, but I just had a feeling that the fact that they were talking about froyo and boys really didn't give me that activist vibe,
Hey, don't be an elitist. Oh, by the way, for some of us who, aren't as cultured as you two, can you please explain what Che Guevara is?
Jojo, do you want to take this, or do you want me to?
I'm fine if you want to.
Yeah, talk, bitch. Sorry.
I don't want to have like a bad description, but he was an Argentinian Marxist revolutionary. He was an author, he was a diplomat, military theorist. It sounds like I studied him for way too long, but that's the basics that I know about him. He was a major figure in the Cuban Revolution, basically.
Yeah.
All right. Pretty cool. That's pretty. God. Listen, guys, we have 8 minutes left. How do we fill this?
I actually have to go,
do you guys want to talk about? Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you guys for the conversation, and it's been
Cameron.
very nice
Yeah.
hearing yours.
It was nice to
opinions.
meet you.
Nice to meet you guys too. and have fun for the next 8 minutes.
Thank you.
All right. It's gonna just be
Bye.
silence.
Bye.
Bye.
Cameron, do you want to talk about Hamilton?
I have
Yeah,
a
we
fun
can-
way how we can fill this gap.
Oh well, okay.
Okay.
It's not gonna be Hamilton.
Damn it.
Anyway, the kinds of revolution. I touched on it earlier. Say a
Oh
digital
yeah, that's a very good.
revolution.
That's a
A-
very
All right,
good.
wait. Pretend like we've been continuously talking. So
Yeah,
yeah,
gonna
I
no.
cut
get, I
this,
get
so
what
we're
you're
gonna-
saying when you talk about that, because like you can't just status or identify revolution as a singular being, because there's so many different variations that can happen. Like you were
Yeah,
talking
there's so
earlier
many
about
manifestations.
you were talking earlier about the Me Too movement. Like it really can range from this good thing that just allows women to come forward, or even like Nazism was technically a revolution when it happened. But like Tale of Two Cities or the French Revolution, that is extremely violent, extremely bloody. And then on the other end of the spectrum would be the Me Too movement. And then somewhere in between would be Black Lives Matter movement, because it's mostly about information, but at the same time, the extremists took it to rioting, but that was also just a very small amount of
Yes,
people. But
exactly.
yeah,
So-
there's different parts of a revolution that we can discuss.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel we're moving once again into this global era where I think revolutions, the face of revolutions it's changing. It's changing because, I mean, look at the Me Too movement. You can call that a revolution, and it happened online. Yes, there were
Oh,
some
definitely, yeah.
protests. There were protests and things like that, but it happened online. It wasn't this thing of a concrete power structures being overthrown. No, it's a side effect of the patriarchy that's being overthrown. And I think that links with power, you know, is we don't know exactly where power is coming from anymore. I mean, yeah, you overthrow a government, do what you want. That sounds really bad. Anyway, but I think the face of revolutions is changing because we are no longer fighting a concrete thing. We're fighting these abstract social structures. And I think that is often why the face of revolution is changing. And I think that we need to take that into account when we look at revolutions in the media.
But
Because
don't
it's
you? Can
I'll talk.
no. I think I'll talk.
I think I'll talk. Because now we've realized to a certain extent that not all problems come from a government or from an oppressive regime.
Exactly.
Some of the problems come from within, from ourselves, you know. We have to fight certain things that we believe or that we think or that are believed around us. It's not just imposed on us by a government, but actually imposed on us by ourselves.
But how dangerous do you think it is to have like the online, like if the change or the face of revolutions are changing, right, to become more online? Wouldn't it be necessarily, I guess, like more dangerous to have it online because it can be censored a lot easier or a lot more easily?
It can be censored a lot more easy, but it can also not be. Like you see, I don't know if you guys have read a lot about TikTok or know a lot about it, but
I try to avoid it.
I've seen a study lately about what TikTok bans, what information and what videos it bans, and it tends toward banning people with leftist ideals rather than right-wing ideals.
Damn
the
right.
platform it also tends toward banning people who don't look a certain way or who don't fulfill this quota. Like often there's a trend where you show pride in your body, but the skinny girls get kept up and the fat girls get taken down. You know, it's a catch-22 in that sometimes, yes, when it goes to extremes, or even when it doesn't go to extremes, it gets taken down. But then there's also the part where people can try start a revolution that isn't good for anyone but themselves, and they aren't taken down. They are kept up. Those are promoted.
Yeah. I think for me, the interesting thing about this move to media, let's say it that way, is that I've seen, I follow this page on Instagram called Feminist, university work being filtered into an online community with journal article resources. Now, my thing is, if you put something up online, right, say it gets taken down, it was probably seen by someone. Someone took in that information, and that person who took in the information can decide what they want to do with that. If it's something that they support and they want to further, they might tell their friends about it or create a whole new post about it. And that for me is very, very interesting. The way how the topics that we have access to in a position of privilege in tertiary education are making their way down to your quote unquote average person.
No, exactly. Social media provides the average person that wouldn't have had access to such information with the information that they required. But there's also what you were talking about, Cameron, is the danger of censoring something. Like if you want to start a movement on Instagram, there's the danger of it being censored. But the thing is, once it's posted on Instagram, it's out there. People have seen it. Like, I only know that a bunch of stuff is being censored that shouldn't be being censored because they can tell me about it through social media, you know?
I want to pose a question to you guys, just based on what you guys think, because I feel like you have more information on the social media thing than I do. But
Same.
how do you go about supporting a revolution when not all of it is what you stand for? You know, let's say you stand for a certain revolution, but you don't stand for the mob mentality that may be injuring innocent people due to that mob mentality. How do you, if you stand for a certain revolution that, let's say 80% of it, you're like, yes, this is what must happen. But the other 20%, you're like, no, that's a little bit wrong. How do you go about that?
No, I am with you in the confusion or in the struggle, because like I am adamantly a feminist and I try my hardest to fight for women's rights in any way that I possibly can. But if I say I'm a feminist, often people associate it with this very negative connotation that feminists are aggressive women who think men should be below us and stuff like that. And it's difficult to fight because I do follow a lot of feminist pages, and sometimes every now and then I do see posts that are actually quite against a lot of what I believe, And I think we spoke about this in the live event, my live event last month. But there's men's rights activists, and often even I was conditioned to think, oh no, they're just awful people who hate feminism. But actually, some of them really just want to improve the rights of men. They want them to allow to keep their children if they deserve it, or to improve mental health within men. But as a feminist, I was conditioned to believe that the only thing they want to do is be above women, and that's not exactly correct. And I don't necessarily agree with talking down about all men's rights activists, because that's not necessarily true. But it's difficult to do that when that's all you can consume is people who think that way. Yeah.
Okay, we have hit the mark. If anyone wants to say anything extra, you have the go-ahead.
I want to say thanks for that. That helps.
Yeah.
And it didn't at all. I just said I agree with you, and I have no idea how to.
Yeah, but it makes me feel less lost because, I think when we realize that all of us are a bit lost in this, it helps us figure out that we're all struggling to fight for what's right and against what's wrong at the same time.
Okay,
Sorry,
cool.
Tash.
Yeah, very, very true.
Yeah,
My
I just
God, Jen, you're an excellent orator. Go on, Tash.
Lord. I just wanted to say thank you for this conversation, guys. I think we voiced a lot of things that we weren't sure about, and we just kind of built on this topic, and I think this is a really enlightening conversation, and I think conversations such as these are the ones that we need to have more of.
I just want to thank you guys so much for helping me. I was really nervous about doing this, and I was really stressed, and you guys made it really easy, so thank you so much.
Well,
No,
I
it's
am
fine.
easy.